I know there's a lot of people been upset about that as a Marvel film, and like Kong is like such a Korean Asian name, and it's an African American male playing that role. So it's just like, a lot of people have been talking about that. So
It's Kang, not Kong.
yes, Kang. That's how we say it in America. But if you go to Korea, you'd say Kong. They don't actually have the A in Korea.
Oh, but the character in the comics is Kang.
Is it Kang? Does
Pronounced
he
that way.
pronounce
Yep.
it Kang? Okay.
Yep. And it was
They
African
Americanized
American
that
character as
character.
well.
Was
So
it
like
in the comics
yeah.
too?
So in the
That's
comics, he's multiple characters. So it's the same person, Kang the Conqueror. His biggest enemies are other versions of himself from parallel dimensions and stuff like that. So he is just super powerful because he's been to the future and has all these fun toys and gadgets to destroy everything. But it is actually very, very comic accurate.
I love people are okay with somebody playing Kang and being okay with that, but you put an African American as a mermaid with red hair and everyone throws a fit like, oh, that's not like, and it's just like, who cares,
It's
it's
ridiculous when
it's like white
when the
people
culture
doing
is
that to
not tied
us.
to the story. Yeah, right.
Exactly, it's just like Ariel is just a mermaid that fell in love with a human that had legs and had
because
all this stuff.
Yeah.
believing that mermaids are real is such an easy stretch. The fact that she might be African American is just ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Yes.
It's I actually haven't heard about this controversy. I think that I've been kind of underwhelmed by Marvel recently. So
Yes.
I've been not very tuned in terms of that discourse or drama.
You're not
I
missing
think
anything.
the bigger problem with that character right now is Jonathan Majors, that
He's
actor
in a
that
lot of
plays him.
trouble,
He's in
man.
a lot of hot water. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, but that's, that was another thing. And then I guess like I said, we could talk more because as like one of the thoughts that I had was also about this new we talked about like Marvel being underwhelming, but also like DC now is like creating the multiverse with different, you got Flash and different Flashes, and now Batman, and everyone's talking about now the Asian Superman coming back because now in the comics Superman became Asian and wasn't the most popular Superman, but it was like okay, and I know Dean Cain I think portrayed him in Lois and Clark in the early, was it the 90s or 2000s or whatever, but I know again Dean Cain half Japanese, 6'5", whatever, but still, like I think he was the closest thing we had to like an Asian Superman, so
big problem with the DC stuff is they're just awful.
And you're just not good.
Like
James Gunn
all
now though,
around.
you never know. James Gunn might, change that. And then also that's another question. Jason Momoa, I mean, technically not Asian, Pacific Islander, but playing Aquaman, who's like blonde hair in the comics, I think, blonde hair and white guy, And it's like I don't think people seem to necessarily have a problem with that. I know the movie wasn't as good as I thought. It was a better DC film, but I know like I never heard too many people complain, "Oh, he should be a white dude with blonde hair." But I was like, is
Right.
that also because it's Jason Momoa and women don't mind just looking at him, and probably men too, and everything. But it's just it's one of those things. I think people look at Jason Momoa as well and kind of look at him as American because he's very just a cool dude, like a surfer dude, like you just kind of, and he's from Iowa, so he's like the Midwest nice and everything. So,
Right.
I don't know, but yeah, I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say more because I was like, when you guys were saying, I was like, yeah, there was a lot more to say. I know, and everything. So whatever you guys want to say, I'm down for talking a little more with you guys. So
I'll start with just a question for you guys. I kind of talked about how seeing all these big Asian movements and Asian changes as far as moving away from stereotypes, getting bigger lead roles, more dramatic roles versus comedic roles and stuff like that, and how it kind of changed my perspective on what I'm doing. My own career, like my writing, has completely changed. I don't feel like I'm gonna miss out on jobs because I am Asian. Like I said, working on crews, there is not a whole lot of Asian guys out there, or Asian women for that matter. The crews that I work on are, a lot of times very white, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Everyone's been very accepting, very cool, and appreciate when I'm there. But it's one of those things that I feel like with more and more representation, I'm getting more and more chances. So like I said, I told you my writing style has completely changed on how I approach how I write something, how I approach how I do the cinematography, how I choose how to do my lighting, how to do, all the things that I've always wanted to do. I feel like I've been given that opportunity to be able to do that. My side is completely different than your side. You guys both primarily do acting. I know you both might do a little bit more behind the scenes and stuff. But like I said, I know you guys primarily as actors. Whereas on my side of things, I felt like that change might be a little bit easier because now that I have this representation, it's very easy for me to just transition into writing my own characters that are like me, that look like me, that sound like me, that have similar backgrounds as me. How do you guys feel about it? Like, do you feel like you have had a shift in your perspective or what you feel like you're able to do because of the recent explosion, we'll call it, of, I don't even, Asian popularity? I don't know.
Mary, you can go first.
Oh, you don't have your mic on.
Sorry, I'm muted. Okay.
You're good.
Well, for me, I actually haven't done a ton of acting recently. I graduated with my minor in theater from college and did a few plays here and there, but I think the pandemic kind of threw a wrench in a lot of my acting interests and pursuits. Um, but I feel like things just feel more tangible and possible, just by seeing people who, I don't know, I feel like when I think of especially early 2000s, what Asian actresses look like, it was like Lucy Liu, like you had to look like a supermodel basically in order to be cast. And I think that now I feel more comfortable when the opportunity arises, maybe to audition for more things or to feel like I don't have to be some just like one-dimensional character. I really like the idea that Asian women are allowed to be angry and that an Asian girl could just be an all-American girl. Like I didn't love the movie To All the Boys Loved Before, but I remember seeing it in 2018 and appreciating at least the fact that like she was Asian, but it wasn't like her entire personality was revolved around that aspect of her being, an immigrant or anything. Like she was an American girl. Um, still in love with like some white boys usually. So I mean that could still be changed and improved in terms of getting more representation for Asian girls other than the stereotypes. But yeah, I think that I feel like the world is more open to me and that the world is looking for ways to diversify their organizations. And I think that's a great change, great shift.
Yeah, for me, I agree because I kind of have seen a shift. You talked about For All the Boys I Ever Loved Before. I think maybe Phil can relate to that, but I kind of more related to that, and I think Lana did, which is why she was casted because she was also adopted and had white parents. And I remember someone watching that, and I remember someone saying to me, I liked that film, but it was weird that she had a white dad. And for me, I remember watching that and I didn't think anything of it. Like for me, because I have white parents as well being adopted. So it's like I didn't see anything different. And the way she acted was like, oh, that's totally me. That was me in high school because I also went to a very small school in Iowa that had all white kids. So, I liked white girls. And for a long time, I only wanted to date white girls until, I was in college. And then I realized, like, and I remember I didn't even really like white girls or Asian girls in college, and then I went to Korea in 2007, and I remember the first time, and like then it was like all Asian women, and I think that was when I kind of realized like, wow, it's not just like me. For the first time, I was no longer the minority. I remember it was for adoptees. Going back to Korea, it was for adoptees, and so some of the kids that were under 18 had to bring their parents with them. And I remember getting off the bus, and one of the other Asian kids, one of the other Korean adopted kids that was our age, looked at me and goes, "For the first time ever, the white people that we're with are the minority, and we are the ones that blend in." Because he's like, whenever we're in America, I was with my parents. I was always the one that like stood out because they're like, "Oh, there's this white family with an Asian kid," and he's like, "For the first time now, I'm the Asian guy with the white people following me," and I think for that movie for me, I was like I saw because my sister's also adopted as well, so I saw her life in that as well, and everything, and kind of me with white girls, kind of, and all that stuff. So I really liked that. I liked that film. Again, like you said, it would have been better if maybe she had like an Asian love interest. It might have been cool. But then also you get into those fields of like, well, if there's only two Asians in a school, should they be the only two should they be the two that date each other?
Right.
Um,
Right.
but
I
I
mean,
like that film.
that's my
Huh?
reality. Like I look at that and I say to myself, okay, so if I wanted to date when I was in high school or something like that, it had to be a white girl. There,
Yes,
there
me too.
wasn't any other option for me.
Except my
Which more times than not led to me not dating at all because I was the Asian outcast and no one wanted to be with that person. So it was
times
one of
have
those things that
changed, man.
when I got to college, though, it all changed. I've dated women of all races. I did actually fall for a white girl, getting married in June, so very excited for that. So I have a little
I
uh,
know you have a new kid, so congrats,
five
new
month
Yes,
old
father.
now,
So
congratulations.
beautiful baby girl. So it's one of those things that like it just is. It is a reality that a lot of people do go through. Like the whole, yeah, no, I mean like it was weird for me when I got to college and I went to Iowa State at first, which is a very large Asian community at Iowa State. I remember talking to people and being like, "So you actually like white girls?" I'm like, "Listen, man, that's all I had for opportunities when I was growing up." So yeah, I mean, like, I'm not
Yeah, and
saying
I'm not completely dissing white people or anything. I
right,
was just referring to the stereotype, and definitely there are tons
yes,
of wonderful allies and
of
people
course,
who are supportive and
of
understanding of the
course.
community. I'm just talking in terms of representation, the
Yeah,
boundaries.
yeah, I
So we had to
agree.
break them down.
But Noah Centineo or whatever, hey, I know the women love him, and he is a good looking guy, so
He's
why
okay.
not?
He's just all right.
Oh, I've heard
but I
so
feel
many
like
people
that
who say
to
that.
to a degree that does represent something well. Like it is weird growing up in that small town, being adopted, being the only Asian person. So, like I said, I kind of understood and felt that, and I thought it was kind of cool that like, yeah, she didn't date only the Asian guys out there. She did date other people. So, I mean, like I said, I see pluses and minuses with everything. Like I said, nothing's perfect. But it is nice seeing just more in general.
So I want to ask you guys, Jamie Lee Curtis, did you guys like her character, like her and everything, everywhere, all at once?
Yeah, I loved her character. It was one of those great characters where she did like change so much about the way she was moving and everything like that. It was a phenomenal performance. So I very much enjoyed it. I loved her probably most as the angry IRS agent person though. The other roles because like that role was just so fun for me to watch her do that. And like my fiance watched it and she's like, at first I didn't even realize that was Jamie Lee Curtis. And that says something right there. She's a very recognizable face. And once you see it, it's like, oh yeah. But like it was one of those, hey, she did a great job with.
I thought she was great as the lesbian hot dog finger woman. I thought that was, I feel like people kind of gloss over that. Like Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis did play a
So great.
lesbian couple in Debbie, which I think
Yeah.
is hilarious, absurd, and wonderful. Not
And it
that they're
was
a
so
lesbian,
hard
but
to
the
do that.
they have
Like
hot
that
dog.
role. Oh, beautiful. But it was. I loved it. It was
It
great.
was the range. I like that too because it just showed Michelle Yeoh in a different light, not just the crouching tiger, hidden dragon lady. It was like she's kung fu, but she can play all these different roles from these different ranges and do it very wonderfully. And I think the same with Ki Kwan because I'm sure he gets called Data or Short Round all the time. I mean, heck, growing up Asian, I remember I went to tennis camp and they all called me Short Round, and then I went to a swimming camp and they all called me Data. So I remember, like, that. I mean, like, you couldn't get away with that now in today's society, but back then, whatever. But I just remember. So I'm sure for him too, it was I loved his. I loved his range. I think even more so, kind of as we covered before, was just this transition of characters and this alpha into this beta, and it was I think of a play in Korea called Jump. If you've never seen it, it's on Broadway. It's an amazing play. it's about an Asian family that moves to America, an immigrant family, and their kids are all kung fu people, except the one son who wears glasses and is dorky and nerdy, and he just wants to go to school and learn and be smart and change the world. And his family's like, no, you must do kung fu and everything. And he gets bullied a lot, and his family wants him to learn, but he doesn't want to learn. But then he takes off the glasses and he turns into this like Bruce Lee superhero type of character, and then he puts the glasses back on and he becomes this kind of quiet Asian. And I remember like thinking when he did it, he did the whole Bruce Lee thing, and I was just thinking, to Asian Americans, I guess, is like Bruce Lee is kind of like the Superman. That body that he had, that perfect triangular body, the six pack, the abs, his speed, that what he did. I mean, if you've never watched the documentary How Bruce Lee Changed the World, you should watch it. Absolutely, it shows from facets of sports to eating to diet to martial arts to film, how he changed the industry completely, just everything. And that was one of those plays that it really made me think as Asian too, is before Shang-Chi, was who do we have? We don't have anybody. I mean, Bruce Lee's a real person, so he's not really a superhero. And it was like, well, who do we have? And I'm glad to see Ki Kwan now. A kid could say, that's who I want to be for Halloween now. You don't have to be like, oh, I want to be the blue Power Ranger, or I want to be the yellow Power Ranger, or I want to be a ninja, or I want to do something super Asian. You can actually be, a character, and I
Yeah,
think that's so great.
wasn't the yellow Power Ranger the only Asian Power Ranger? I don't know if I'm remembering correctly. I think there was also a Black Power Ranger, actually.
Yes,
Johnny.
Yeah,
Johnny Young Bosch. He is half
Mhm.
Korean, half American, but he was the second Asian kind of Asian Power Ranger. So but yes, Trini, Tui Trang, who eventually died in that car accident, unfortunately, which is why she was written off the show. A lot of people don't know that. Dustin Nguyen, I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's the famous Hollywood actor, has been in a lot of things. And his wife and him and Tui Trang were in the car together, and they all hit the car. And Dustin Nguyen's wife is now paraplegic, I think. She's permanently in a wheelchair. And then Tui Trang died, and Dustin injured his back so much that when he was in the show VIP, um, there was actually, I think, the fourth season. You see him on the show, he doesn't actually move. He's just standing still, or he's sitting in a chair, because he had actually like ripped every single muscle in his back and broke his back in the car accident and couldn't actually do anything. So that was something I didn't know. I learned about that later on. So
I am completely unfamiliar with that incident. Um,
yes.
and they're from what show? I think I got a
So
little bit.
So the show, it was a show called VIP. If you've never watched it, it's kind of funny show. Val Irons Protection. It was Pamela Anderson starred in it, and she had some Baywatch models also, like Molly Culver and a few other women. But they also had Dustin Nguyen, who played one of the characters. She was this like she played like she was a bodyguard for celebrities and A-list people and stuff, is on the show she was. And so her character Val Irons hires all these people, and one of the people happens to be Dustin Nguyen, because he knew martial arts and all that stuff. So he was on the show. The show only lasted for like 3 or 4 seasons or something like that. It was in the early 2000s, and it's one of those shows that you watch and you just go, oh man, how did this become a TV series, because the acting is not the best, and it's really over the top and cheesy. But his character in that, I always wondered that, because in the first few seasons you see him, he's like fighting and doing all this stuff, and in the last season he doesn't do anything. Like he's the one in the office. He's like, oh yeah, I'm just coming back, or he's just standing or sitting, because they said he could barely even stand up. They'd have to prop him up and then shoot really quickly like that, and then he'd have to go back down because he like broke his back in the car accident, which killed the yellow Power Ranger and then made his wife like quadriplegic or whatever. So if you ever see him on the red carpet, a few years ago he wheeled his wife on the red carpet. So and I think that's kind of when the story broke. People were like, "Oh, what happened?" And they were like, "Oh, you remember the Yellow Ranger? That's why she was written off the show, because she died." So it's unfortunate, but she was the
yeah.
only one, and she was the only one. Johnny Young Bosch, I think, and then I think like a few years ago in 2015, maybe 20. Wow, that seems like
A few
only a few
years
years
ago,
ago.
that was a long
That's
time
a
ago
long
now.
time ago now. That seems weird.
8 years.
Yeah, I think there was like an Asian Power Ranger, I think then too, or something. But I mean, of course, there's if you're a Power Ranger, it's like they say the curse of the Power Ranger, your career's over. So, just happened to be that. But yeah, and then but Dustin Nguyen has been in many great films. One of the films is Better Luck Tomorrow. Have you guys ever seen that?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, so Better Luck Tomorrow was kind of the Crazy Rich Asians of the early 2000s. Um, it has John Cho. It has oh gosh, who are the Roger Fan. It's got Justin Lin. It's got a bunch of Asian actors that were popular at the time. Um, and it's kind of about how what Asians it's very cultural type of show. It's like the three Asians decide to get together and help people cheat on their SATs in college, kind of they make a business out of it and become very rich from it and different things like that. But it's very good. It was kind of the first it was the first film that director, what's his name? Is it Justin Lin who did the Fast and the Furious films? I think that was his film. It was his first film that he directed. So like that, and that was that. And Sung Kang is in it. That's how he got linked with Sung Kang. That's why Sung Kang's in all the like Fast movies because Justin Lin directed them and he worked with Sung Kang in that. So Sung Kang's in it. Sung Kang kind of plays like the rebel that gets the idea for these guys. He's kind of the troublemaker because it's like two Ivy League Asian guys, of course, at Princeton or Stanford or wherever, and they're just trying to go, but they're so smart that everyone's like, "Hey, I'll give you $5 to like cheat on my test," and he's like, "Oh," and then he gets the idea, "Hey, what if you charged $40 a test, or what if you did this?" And then SATs we charge 300, and we just go in and take the test for them, and it's just kind of it's an okay film. If you watch it today, there's probably so many culturally things that are wrong with it, but for that time it was a good film. They called it the Joy Luck Club of like the 2000s. So if you ever saw Joy Luck Club, I don't know if you guys ever saw that, but another Asian woman film that was so great that I loved. That had so many great Asian women in it that starred in that and showed their lives and as immigrants and everything. So it's another film you guys should check out if you've never seen it. So
Definitely. I remember that coming out when I was still pretty young, so I was not on my radar as much. So something I definitely need to circle back to.
you'll
Very
cry.
long. I have a
Yes.
very long list on Letterboxd of things I want to watch.
And you'll cry if you watch it, so just be prepared because it's kind of sad. I mean, there's stories. It's just life stories of different women, and just some people have better lives than others, and so it's kind of sad because, like you said, it's the immigrant story. You come here thinking I'm gonna make a better life for myself, and sometimes you don't. It's just like it's the gamble of moving and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good movie though. I love that film, and then I think so yeah, that's all I have for that. So
One thing I just want to circle back to, and I don't know if you just want to edit this and move this back to when we were
yeah, yeah,
talking, but with Crazy Rich Asians, another thing that I noticed, I remember watching it at the time and not really thinking about it, but all the darker skinned Asians were like the help. So I
yes,
just was thinking about the idea of, I don't know, I'm Filipino and I'm very light
yes,
skinned for Filipino, but I very much care for the advocacy and representation of darker skinned Asian people,
yes,
which is very prevalent. So much in Filipino media, there's so many half white or very light skinned Filipinos who are the leading actors and actresses.
sure,
And even still in the culture in general, I remember growing up and my parents and my grandparents telling me like stay out of the sun. We have these whitening products if you need to use them. And that's just heartbreaking. And I think that we have a long way to go into that kind of representation as well.
also talking about Crazy Rich Asians, you mentioned that, and I know that that's unfortunately prevalent in Asian cultures and society that the you go to we had a Korean restaurant here, and I just remember like the Filipinos worked in the back washing dishes, and it was the Koreans that were up front. And I always just thought that was like, always bad too, because it's like you said, it's representation is good for everybody and everything. And again, it unfortunately, it's a cultural thing with Asian people, which is probably why a lot of representation and a lot of Asians don't get as much, because there's so much kind of our culture is the best. Kind of Koreans think that Korean K-pop and Korean dramas and everything are the best. And Japanese will say, well, no, J-pop and J-dramas are the best. And Chinese will say, no, ours is. And oh yeah, but we have more people and different things like that. So it's one of those things that you know, when you look at it, yeah, I don't know. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
I
we
had
definitely
another thought,
have
but
a long way to go. Yeah, we're just kind of rolling here with our ideas, and I think it's cool that we decided to hop on chat a little bit more.
So, big question that I have for you guys is, things seem to be going in a way that we're all pretty happy with. Things are trending upward for us. Is there something that you really wish we would see? Something that hasn't been done that you're like, hey, you know what? I really want to see this happen.
I mean, personally, as a Filipino person, I would love to see amazing Filipino representation. I know that Filipinos are kind of known for certain figures that broke into US mainstream, like Manny Pacquiao in terms of boxing, or Jokoy in terms of stand-up comedy. But even then, I feel like with Jokoy's comedy, it becomes a little bit repetitive in terms of imitating his Asian mother's accent. Or I saw his film Easter Sunday with my family, and it was not excellent. I feel like there could be more nuance when it comes to how his family was portrayed. I felt like it went for a lot of gag and not for a lot of emotional heart and core. So definitely more, yes, brown and Southeast Asian representation, not just East Asian representation. Just spreading the love throughout the continent, I suppose.
you guys have Dante Bosco, who played Rufio and Hook.
We do.
He's
Yes.
been in a lot of things. You have Apple from Black Eyed Peas, who even has his own song. I think Bebop or whatever it was. I remember that song
About,
came out.
yeah.
Yeah. So I that's the thing. It's like Filipinos. It's weird because they have this trend in American culture. They've been there. It's just I don't think people have like recognized them. And that's unfortunate too, because the Filipinos. I mean, there's like you said, there's so many. I think there's so many more we don't think of in the film industry, that we've just seen maybe in the background or as a secondary character. And it's a shame, because they should, like Dante Bosco. I'd watch anything he does. That guy's hilarious. I
Oh, I
love
mean, I
Dante.
love him as Zuko. That was an incredible
Oh
voice
yeah,
acting role. One of the best
Yes.
shows of all time, truly.
Yes, so it's just like, Dante and everything. So yeah, definitely, I think there should be, and that's another thing though, is I know Filipinos have that, right? But it's like that debate is, are you Pacific Islander or are you Asian? What do you fill out when you say it? And how do you identify? And I know some identify as Asian, some identify as Pacific Islander. So, you know, um, I think they're kind of in this like middle where I consider Filipinos Asian. I've always done
I
it.
would consider them Asian as well. I think Pacific Islanders have a little bit more of an isolated or different culture that developed separately.
Mhm.
In terms of our language has more in common with I think it's called Austronesian language family than those of the Pacific Islanders.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
don't quote me on that completely. I feel like
No,
that's something I read in a linguistics class once,
it's
and
all
then
good. But
might be.
let's think.
no,
Asia encompasses so many different countries. I mean, look at India. Um, there's so many Indian films out there. They're technically Asian. And, I mean, like
Yeah.
you want to talk about the very first Asian person to win an Oscar, Ben Kingsley won it for Gandhi. Uh, Technically Asian. It's just something that we don't really think about because he's half Indian, and then half British, I think it is. It's one of those things you don't think about. But I mean, if you really want to get down to it, yes, there was some small degree of representation many, many years ago for that film. But it's one of those things like, I don't know, for me and for Mary, like I said, she'd love to see some more Filipino roles that are more specific to her. Like, I didn't see a whole lot of East Asian uh, roles out there. So, like I said, it was one of those things. I was always just the stereotype. So it's nice to see those change. And I would agree with Mary. There's just not been a whole lot of Filipino representation in that respect. You know, you don't get that whole like idea of their culture and who they are and where they come from. So I totally get where she's coming from.
Because chicken adobo is the best, man. So people need to get on
And
it and don't.
Jollibee.
Yes, don't sleep on that. And Jollibee in LA, man, it's so great. So yeah, you cannot sleep on chicken adobo, man. So like that's more people should love that, man. So I love chicken adobo. If I can find a
I don't love
24-hour
any
chicken
kind of
adobo
food,
place.
though, so
It's interesting, actually. I think that Filipinos have been realizing and discussing in recent times that we're kind of an invisible minority within the Asian community. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but actually, Tagalog, the main language of the Philippines, is the fourth most spoken language in the US.
Oh wow.
I'm pretty sure it's English, Spanish, Chinese, and Tagalog. And there's a increasingly growing minority of us, especially since the US has ties to the Philippines due to imperialism. And
Sure.
my grandpa lived in the US during post-World War II times because he was recruited by the army. And I just think that, I don't know, it's very interesting to be part of a minority that isn't necessarily a scene, but is also, a little more populous in the US than people think. So I think I don't know. I think about a lot of it also ties into those immigrant parent expectations. Both my parents are nurses, which is very stereotypical profession for Filipinos to be in, and they still are hoping that one day I'll go back to school and be a nurse, which is not going to happen. But I don't know. I think it's great that we have so many more people coming up in the Asian community who are willing to take on risks and do roles. Like I think Stephanie Shu was able to pull off this role of this rebellious young Asian girl who was able to start to forge her own path and not become anything in particular, but embracing herself by the end of the film as Joy / Jobu. So
Yeah,
major
I loved her role, and hopefully maybe next Oscars we'll see her nominated for supporting or again or maybe even lead or something. But I have a feeling Michelle Yeoh is not done. I have a feeling that she's not that Stephanie's not done. I have a feeling that we're gonna see hopefully we'll see a few more in all the categories too. Even director, I would love to see. We've had Asian directors in the past when it's not a category that we haven't had, but I would like to see more. I think, Parasite when they won and everything. Yeah, I just felt that
Bong
he was,
Joon-ho is
yeah, I
is
just
it
felt
wait, hold on. Let me get his name right. What is his name again?
Bong Joon-ho, yeah, Bong Joon-ho. Um,
I
he,
could have won.
I, and unfortunately, when he won, of course, didn't speak English, and not that that's a problem, but it was kind of like, oh well, an Asian guy wins, but look, he doesn't speak English. He's because that's the thing I always get is people are like, oh, you speak good English. It's like, well, yeah, of course I speak in good English, man. I grew up here. Like, it's like an expectation thing. So, yeah, I'm glad that he won, but I wish that like an Asian American would win. Like, I wish Justin Lin could win something and go up there and just speak like he does. Because if you ever hear him speak, he's like so not what you think. He's just like, hey, dude, what's up, man? Like, yeah, dude. He just calls everyone dude and man. Even if you're a girl, he still says dude, man. He just calls everyone that, and that would be
I
so
get that. I
awesome.
call everyone bro,
Yeah,
regardless.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And
so
so I think
I just feel like I wish Justin Lin got a chance to do something a bit more dramatic. Like said,
more than Fast and the Furious.
more than just like terrible action movies.
Yes, yes, yes,
But I
yes.
mean, like at the same time, like if I'm Justin Lin, they're gonna give me more money to direct another one. I'm not gonna say no.
No, and that's the problem. Like he's got to feed his family, and it's a lot of money, and it's a franchise, and it's got some of the biggest stars like Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Now they're adding John Cena or Jason Momoa now, and you have Brie Larson and Jason Statham and Vin Diesel, and it's like, how can you not say no to that?
Right.
Yeah,
Like, okay, they're gonna give me literally anything I want to do another
yeah,
one.
yeah.
I'm in. Let's do
You
it.
you have to,
But it's one of those
So
things. It's great to see that opportunity for him as well. I mean, like there's so many times throughout history where like people didn't get a chance, and it's great to see that you have a successful director uh, from our community. I mean, like I said, when we talk about African Americans, Asians, and even like for a long time Italian, like if you look at like Francis Ford Coppola, the only reason he got the job to direct The Godfather was because he was Italian. There are some very racist comments said that I won't repeat on here because but that is literally how he got the job. He was just some studio director that was making terrible films like Dementia 13. If you haven't seen it, it's awful. It gives me all the hope in the world because
don't
I
watch
say to
it.
myself, hey, if somebody can make that movie and turn around and make The Godfather, maybe there's hope for me yet.
I
But
saw
it's
they're
one of those
recasting.
things. That,
They're redoing Scarface with DiCaprio playing Scarface.
yeah,
Tony
I don't
Montana.
know
I
how I
saw.
feel.
So I know. Me
But yeah,
either,
like
man. I
I
was
said,
like,
it just
Pacino
takes
did so good.
it takes a few people to get that chance to give more people more chances. Because,
Right.
like I said, they weren't going to cast an Italian director, and essentially they said, "How can you make an Italian film without an Italian director?" Granted, it was far more racist than that the way they said it. So he got the job. He was a nobody, and he completely like they're like, "We don't care about this film. We're not going to do anything with this film. It's not going to be big. The casting's all wrong. This is all stupid." So they didn't pay attention. So he basically took the script, crumbled it up, and threw it out. Did his own thing. It was completely different than the book that it was based on, but it is now a film icon. It is considered one of the greatest films of all time. The sequel is considered one of the greatest sequels of all time, and it's because he got a chance. And like I said, I look at it and I'm like, anytime anybody gets a chance at all, that's a great thing. And pretty soon, maybe he is going to get that chance to do something really dramatic and really something different than what he is. But you got to take those jobs to make sure that you're still out there and you get that opportunity. So, I'm always looking forward to seeing what's next and what's going to happen next. And there's always that hope that maybe it's going to be me. Maybe it's going to be somebody I know. It's always good to see something like that. But it's just great to see anybody that's really getting any chances at all. And the more chances we have, the more we're gonna do. And the more it's gonna become accepted. Where like I said, I see, there's more people that I meet all the time that are Asian that work behind the scenes. Whereas before I felt like, 20 years ago when I was doing it, I felt like there wasn't anybody ever. And just more and more, I see more and more diversity all the time in crews and in casts. So like I said, the more we do it, the more it's going to become regular. And I love the fact that everyone is on board with trying to make it happen. It doesn't matter what race you are. If you're African American, if you're Hispanic, if you're Latino, if you're Asian, if you're white, it doesn't matter. People are all for this, like, hey, let's represent the world as it is, full of color.
Heck yeah, man. I'm all for it.
All for change.